Now that we are actually sending an email, we are going to perform a test which will match the sending mechanism and also the process of storing a copy of that email into our very own sent folder. This is the file that we used in the previous lesson. It contains the sendmail service, which allocates enough information for us to connect to the SMTP server with our own account and password, and we also know the location for the sent folder. We are creating a new email object in here, as you can see in line 34, and we are updating its message ID as well. We are connecting to the SMTP server, passing our login credentials. We're going to fill in the message content, which is going to be sent in line 56. We specify who's sending the email and who it is sending to, and we finish the connection. The next step is to add in a new line into the execution. I'll define a store method which will have the responsibility of adding in this new message, this new email in line 33, which is constructed via this method in line 43. This same model for the message will be stored in our IMAP server. The sent folder, as you see here in line 8, is the information we need to fetch that folder and shove the message in there. First of all, let's go to the bottom of the file and create the store method. Before we jump into any execution inside this code, I'm going to go to the test folder and create our test. You will now see why I took the decision of creating the test only now. First of all, let's create that. So send email test.rb, and we'll open it on the side. I'm going to paste a snippet of code that's very big, but I'll briefly explain you what it does. This chunk of code is 44 lines long, but don't worry, you'll understand it just as I explain it. We are requiring the test helper, as usual, and we are also going to require the net/smtp package. This will allow us to interact directly with the SMTP server. We also get the email model, which we are using inside the service, and the actual service itself. So I'm declaring a class method called init. It is just a wrapper for an entire procedure that we need to run before actually running the tests. We have a folder service here, which is then executed. We are going to fetch the email count for this very folder, and this method is defined in line 27. It simply goes to the folder, it finds the respective mailbox, and then fetches the amount of emails in that folder. That's all it does. Now, in line 14, we have a set of data. Then we instantiate a new service called sendEmail, which is the one on your right side. We pass in that amount of data, execute the service, and then we are going to clean the previous service that fetches the emails and folders, and we are going to execute it again. This time we are going to fetch the email count again for the same folder, and we'll calculate the difference between the amount of emails in that folder. This way we'll be able to assert whether the message was sent or not, or rather if it was copied into that folder or not. We call this class method in line 33. And finally, we will perform our assertions. The first one is going to assert that the email that was sent has the correct timestamp. The second one will assert that the difference between the amount of emails that was sent is different from the one that was in an initial state before actually sending the email. The number 1 represents the only mail that we've sent. It turns out to be pretty straightforward, but since there are so many lines of code that try to translate this, it can be a little hard to follow. With that being said, let's run the tests. These will of course fail because we still don't have any code that stores the actual email in our sent folder. The tests will take a while because it is required an IMAP connection and an SMTP connection as well. The clean method doesn't exist for the list folder service. Let's go to the list folder service. I'm going to open it in a new tab, and I'll define the new clean method. This method, as I've told you, will clean the entire service's data, specifically the list of folders. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to go to the folders variable and I'll default it to a new empty list. That's all that needs to be done. Let's remove the buffer and run the tests once again. You have to be a little patient for the reasons that I've mentioned. Now you can see that the clean method is private. Well, let's just go ahead and open it again. I forgot to make it so it is a public method. Let me just go up here and define it like so. I'm just going to leave this file in case we need to reach it again. Let's run the tests again, and hopefully we will have a different error. Okay, now the execute method is not defined for the array. Well, that's because when we are cleaning the service, we are calling the execute on top of that. This is assuming that the clean method returns the actual service, so we can chain it. All we need to do is type in self in the last instruction of the method. It will return the service object, so you can do something like this. Let's run the test again. And this time we get an expectation failure. That's great. We are expecting the value of 1 and we get 0. That's because no copy was stored in the sent folder. So that's great. Let's take care of this method. We'll need to connect to the IMAP server and we'll need to append a new message into the specific folder. Let me just collapse all of this since we won't be needing to use this at all. I'm going to paste a snippet of code that connects to an IMAP server, selects a folder, and appends the actual message. This is what we need to do. We need to create a new IMAP instance with the respective IMAP server, then use the user and password that we already have, and then go to the sent folder and append a new message to it. We are going to add in a new flag or a set of flags because that's what's required, and the timestamp will be this one. This is just as the protocol requires. It requires a folder to append the message to, then the message itself, the set of flags that you want to add in, and finally, the actual timestamp. Finally, we just disconnect. This code will run regardless of the result of the code. If an exception occurs, the IMAP connection should still be disconnected. Okay, that's all there is to it in regards to storing a new email into your account. Let's save this file and run the tests. Now we get a method disconnect for nil. Well, this is because the ensure method was invoked, and let me just go ahead and tell that if there's an IMAP connection, then we should disconnect it. Still, we know that the IMAP object is nil. That's because this failed to succeed. Let's define a new IMAP server variable, which will be the result of env courier server. Remember, this is the variable that I chose myself to register my own email IMAP server. Now that's out of the way, let's run the tests again. This can be a little frustrating because it takes so long to run the tests, but it's actually the only way to turn this around. The message method is not available for the service. So this message here should be the method that we have inside. Let's see. Actually, what we need to take advantage of is the instance variable called message. So instead of using a message like this, we use the instance variable. Let me close this again and run the tests. So let's make sure that this passes. And there you go. Now the test is passing. It means that we get the new message stored in the IMAP server. Well, what's the best way to make sure that this works okay? Well, all we need to do is type in bundle exec courier list. That's all there is to it. We already have the code that accesses the entire list of folders in emails, so if we run this command, we should be able to see the list with our new message. And there you go. You can see the correct subject, list of recipients, and whoever's sending it as well. So congratulations! You now know how to connect to an SMTP server, send an actual email, And also you know how to actually store a copy of this email into your own IMAP server. As you can see by the numerous attempts of sending an email, you can see all of them being correctly sent to my own email account. These are all of the messages that have been sent throughout the entire set of tests, but now you know for sure that they are sent and also stored in your own email account. So let's jump to the next lesson where we'll learn how to actually reply to an email. All we need to do is go to one of the emails we already have, modify the subject, create a new body content, and hit the same service. So I hope to see you very soon.